Welcome to the Teapot Reads. My name's Sam. I'm the Teapot. This is what I'm currently reading, and I am so happy to see you today. Hello and welcome back. I'm going to try to bust through this video very quickly because we have a lot of books to get through. I did fantastic in reading this season. If this is your first time here, I do seasonal reading wrap-ups because I'm a fairly slow reader, and it just makes more sense for me to go over like a quarter of the year at a time. So this is my wrap up for June, July, and August, so for summer. I am recording it near the end of August, so it is quite possible I will finish another book, but that would definitely be Kingdom of Copper. I'm only this far through, and it is, as much as I'm enjoying it, turning out to be a fairly slow read, partly just because like outside stressors. But I did read 15 books this season, which is a lot for me. I feel really good about most of them. We're going to get into that in a minute. First, I want to go over goals I have. I set these goals for myself and I like to touch base with them at these quarterly wrap-ups. They're really a nice way to just keep myself accountable. And I will say I think I'm doing a pretty good job with most of my goals. So number one has been quality over quantity. To a degree, I think I really managed that this season. There are a couple detractors, which we'll talk about. But for the most part, those detractors, I was like, this was a crap book. I actually had a lot of fun reading it. So I can't be like too mad. My next big goal is reading one book every 10 days. This has actually been working out really well, and I talk about it a little more in my last wrap up. So if you want to know fuller thoughts and how I kind of keep myself accountable on that, definitely check that video out. But yeah, it's been a great way to get myself continuously reading without overwhelming myself, feeling like I'm not reading enough. And also it lets me sort of have breathing room. So if I'm reading a shorter book and I get my like 10% of the book done every day, I'm able to be like, there are other things I enjoy doing, like playing video games. Let's do that. So it's been, reading one book every 10 days has been a like perfect solution. Since I've read 15 books this season, definitely blew that goal out of the water, but not in a like stressful way. The most important goal I've had in my like goal list for the last year and a half, because I think I started it like halfway through last year, has been reading diversely. My goal by the end of this year is to read 50% diversely, and definitely I'll look at the stats at the end of the year, do them all up and see what it actually is, but for this quarter it was only 40%. There were a couple audiobooks I listened to that kind of screwed me over, and they're part of a pretty long series, so it's probably a series that's going to continue to screw me over, but I did read quite diversely towards the end of the season, so I do feel really good about that. I have noticed that even though I am picking up diverse books, I'm actually not picking up too many books by Black authors. And I think that's a problem. It's definitely something I want to work on. I'm not putting it officially on my goals for this year because at the end of this year, once I've really looked at how diversely or how not diversely I've managed to read, I would like to sit down and reevaluate and make the goals a little more specific. So that is definitely going to end up as something that I work on particularly in 2023, but it is something I want to keep in the back of my mind for the rest of this year, is reading more Black authors. Reading outside has actually gone really, really well. I'm quite proud of myself. I've been doing a lot of reading outside. It's just been in the backyard, but it's been so nice and it's been so peaceful. And yesterday I did like 40 minutes out there, which is a lot for me because the heat gets to me very quickly. And I was just like, it was really charming. And going into autumn, definitely there's going to be even more opportunity because it's going to be a lot nicer out. I am starting a new position at work though, which is going to change my hours and I'll have a lot less free time at home. So I'm going to see, maybe there'll be places to read out towards where I work now, but so far the goal's been pretty good. And obviously I'm re-upping all of these goals moving forward. The only goal I didn't 100% manage is making time for reading. I really wanted to try to find one time every day that worked really well to be like a reading time, to get my brain like it's reading time mode. I would like to continue doing that, but again, with a new position at work, my hours are going to be very different and I'm not going to have as much time to myself at home because it's a longer commute. So I am planning to do a lot of audiobooks on that commute, and my brain hopefully will be like, oh, reading time, relax. But I don't know how that's going to work right now. So I did okay with that goal, and moving forward, I'm actually going to put a pin in it until I get a lot more comfortable with this new commute and this new position, because I honestly think you're going to see the reading go quite a bit down in that time. 2 new goals that I'm adding. 1, I want to read more BookBox books. I subscribe to 3 BookBoxes regularly. Illumicrate, Fairyloot Adult as well, and Owlcrate, and actually Goldsboro, so like 5. And I'm always excited for the books they put out, but I am so slow at getting to them, so slow at reading them. So moving forward, I would like to just be more on top of it, even if it's like 2 books from book boxes every season until I start to get, that won't even catch me up, but a little more caught up than like none, you know. I also want to read more classics. I am definitely going to. When I go into my small TBR portion of this video, you'll see that I have a pretty long classic series planned, but outside of that, I would like to just read more classics. I love reading classics, and I really wanted to read a lot this summer, and it just did not work out, sadly. But hopefully moving forward. Quickly, the stats. Like I said, I read 15 books, 40% of which were diverse. So not a bad stat, but less than I have been. I've been averaging about 44% the last 2 seasons. So I would like to up it, and hopefully when I do my next wrap up, I'll be able to happily declare that I did 50%. YA, 33% of my books were YA, 66% were adult, 6% were reread, which literally just means 1 book, and 20%, so 3 books, were classics. So what did I read? First, I read Far Wilder Magic. This is by Allison Saft. This book was so good. I give it 4.5 stars, and it actually made it into my 10 best books of the year so far video, which I will link above and below if you're interested in. I go a little bit more into it there, so I'm not going to do a super long review. Basically, it is about a magical fox hunt. The romance is pretty good, and the aesthetic is mwah, chef's kisses. It's perfect. It's so good. Loved the aesthetic of this book, and I really also appreciated the ending, which is fairly melancholy, which was not what I was expecting. It's also a fairly nuanced YA. I would say it's mid to upper YA, not steamy, but like complexity wise, definitely something that I wouldn't give like a 6th grader necessarily, unless they wanted to. I wouldn't say like don't read it, but they're probably reading like Caraval before they're gonna read A Far Wilder Magic, but it is really good. And yeah, I recommend it. I also think the cover is gorgeous. And I think this one is kind of getting slept on, which is a shame because, y'all, it's so good. I want to see like lots and lots of fan art because it just has so much potential. And then I read one of my favorite books, probably of all time, which was In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan. I have talked about this book, and I'm going to talk about this book. This book is amazing on so many levels. It just brings me so much joy and so much glee. It was obviously 5 stars, and it's perfect. It is about Elliot Schaefer, who finds out he can see this magical other world and is invited to go to school there. School there actually looks a lot more like a war camp, very like Percy Jackson actually. And he decides to choose the non-fighting route, which I don't even remember what it's called, which is a shame. While he's there, he makes friends with Serene, who is an elf, and with Luke. Why did I blank on his name? With Luke. And really, this book not only defies a lot of tropes of sort of magical school books, but is honestly about Elliot and Elliot's journey to not only be a person capable of loving and being in a good relationship, and I don't just mean like romantic love, but even family love and friendship love. Like, not only is he able to be in that kind of relationship, but he finds like self-worth and comes to realize that he deserves that and wants it. And you know, his journey is so remarkable and amazing to watch on the page, and I'll probably be rereading this every year because it just left such an absolute mark on me. Then I technically reread The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. I already unhauled it. So I bought this book again because I read it when I was a kid and I absolutely loved it. And when I say kid, I was like probably 6th, 7th grade when maybe I was a little older. I don't think I was in high school, but I read it and I thought it was just the most beautiful, amazing book I had ever read. It is this magical realism story, and you're following Ava's life, but you're also following her mother and her grandmother. And it's this really great multi-generational tale about women and empowerment. And it was just beautifully written. And then I read it as an adult and was so severely disappointed. I found a couple elements of it somewhat problematic, just like the reliance on needing to be in a relationship to be truly happy, which I don't think is necessarily the complete message of the book, but is definitely an aspect. And the amount of abuse that the women suffer in the book just was not great for me. I don't think it's a bad book, but coming off such a high of thinking it is the most beautifully written book ever, which upon reread, I really did not think it was even, I mean, it wasn't poorly written, but it definitely wasn't the pinnacle of amazing writing that I had come to put it in my head. And because it just fell so far from grace, I could not keep it. I had to unhaul it almost as soon as I got it and read it. I just had to say goodbye to it, which was a big shame, but it's gone for good. And it's definitely made me be like, there's a lot of series I want to reread. Maybe that's a bad idea. I'll probably still keep rereading them, but I think it's also kind of a nice warning to go into some of the other books that I loved when I was a lot younger that may not hold up the way I want them to, unfortunately. I also read Hotel Magnifique. This was because a friend recommended it and I had gotten it in an Owl Crate, and I was like, yeah, sure, I have it. It'll be a quick read. I read it and I listened to the audiobook and I was so underwhelmed. I really disliked it. I felt like there were a lot of plot holes. This is a story about a magical hotel that is kind of pitched as like for fans of Caraval, which to me is also kind of like a red flag these days. It was so boring. The plot was uninteresting, predictable. Moments happened and characters chose to do things that I just didn't get. People that I thought was like, ooh, this could be interesting to have like some nuance to the character. There was no nuance. They were either a good guy or a bad guy, and there really wasn't much in between. I thought that the balance of the book, like story versus consequence, didn't really make a lot of sense, and I really couldn't connect with any of the characters. The romance was really boring. Motivations for the characters was really boring, and the few moments that were interesting and had like a lot of opportunity to be like continuously interesting really weren't. They were all missed opportunities, and I don't have a lot of good things to say about this book. It was finely written, and I wouldn't say like don't read it. It's not a problematic read, but it's not, I'm never probably gonna read anything this author puts out again. Maybe if she writes like an adult book, I would give it a try because it's not bad writing, but any other YA I am gonna just like stay away from. I gave this one 2.5 stars, which I think is the lowest rating I've given to anything this year. Like even Ava Lavender got like 3 stars. Which, a side note for me, 3 stars means like okay on a haul. 3.5 is kind of like this is the lowest that I want to keep on my shelf unless it's for collectible reasons sort of situation. Luckily I followed Hotel Magnifique up with Babel by R.F. Kuang. Yes, it's an ARC. I absolutely loved it. 5 stars all the way. I think at the time that this video is going up, the book will be out in the world, so go grab it with your grubby little hands. It is amazing and well worth the read. I have at this point up a reading vlog, which I will link above and below, and I'll also link below my non-spoiler review. I think my spoiler-filled review will be up as well. If that's the case, I'll link that as well. Just fantastic book. 5 stars. Because I have so much content on the book, I'm really not going to continue to talk about it. I will just give you the sort of snippet that made me interested when it like got on my radar, which is from award-winning author R.F. Kuang comes Babel, a thematic response to The Secret History and a tonal retort to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell that grapples with student revolutions, colonial resistance, and the use of language and translation as the dominating tool of the British Empire. Then I read my first classic of the season, which was Shadow of the Wind by Carl Ruiz Zafón. I gave it 4 stars, but I wasn't as taken with this as I wanted to be, which was a shame. This is beloved by so many people, and I feel like everyone who's read it has only good things to say about it. I don't think I have bad things to say about it, except there were a couple moments where I was like, that is completely unrealistic, and not in a way that like I could suspend disbelief or need to suspend disbelief because it's somewhat of a fantasy novel, but in ways that I was like, even in a fantasy, this just feels strange and like unbelievable. Like what? I'm not gonna say what because it's spoilers and they happen near the end. But Shadow of the Wind is a book about books and about loving books and about reading and about loving reading, and also a mystery. And I didn't realize the mystery was going to be such a major part of it, but I really enjoyed that. I read this book and listened to the audiobook, and I would listen to the audiobook on the drive home for work. And especially towards the end, I was getting really into it and like screaming at it like, oh my god, and I called it, and like stuff like that. It was really great to have my little running commentary going. But I did only give it 4 stars. I had a really hard time connecting with the characters. I had a really hard time caring, honestly, about relationships. Besides the ones between our protagonist, Daniel, his father, and his friend, I had a really, really hard time caring about any of the relationships in this book. I know I didn't really describe it super well, but basically Daniel is given a book called The Shadow of the Wind. It is written by Julian Carax. Couldn't remember the name Carax. And Daniel starts to try to discover who Julian Carax was, because it seems that someone is going around destroying all of Carax's books, and Daniel is interested and concerned and just generally curious and in love with Carax's writing. It wasn't poorly written, and fun fact, the translator is actually Robert Graves' daughter, Lucia Graves, which, wow, a small world, because I really want to read a Graves at some point. But I don't know. I wasn't swallowed up with the book the way that I feel like a lot of readers are. Hopefully would like to continue this series at some point somewhat soon. I just don't know exactly when. After Shadow of the Wind, I read what has become one of my favorite books of all time ever. Ever, ever, ever. I'm not even kidding. Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. Amazing, obsessed, screaming, crying, gagging, throwing up, everything. Amazing. Absolutely loved Gideon the Ninth. Will not shut up about it. Freaking out internally every time I think about this book. Oh my god, 5 stars. 5 freaking stars. It deserves every single point on those stars. It is amazing. Lesbian necromancers in space. Yes. Murder mystery with almost psychological and video game elements to it. Oh my god, and the memes that made me laugh so hard. I love this book. Super connected to all of the characters. The world was amazing. I'm so invested in the series and where it is going. Literally the best book I have read in years. And then I listened to the audiobook of Dead Until Dark. 3 stars because it made me laugh, but not in an and it was intended to make me laugh kind of way. So, yeah. And then I read Troubles. This is another classic that I read this year. This is Troubles by J.G. Farrell. It's published by NYRB, so it's kind of like a forgotten or lost class. It was really funny. I really loved the aesthetic and the environment that it was written in. And yeah, I will definitely continue with this trilogy, but it's not a high priority just because they're only thematically connected. Like, I don't feel like I need to remember details in order to continue on with it. It's a little macabre and morbid at the end, but in like a really, really entertaining way. And I thought the character Archer was really easy to connect with and to really enjoy as a male protagonist of a classic. He does not fall into a lot of the traps that I think a lot of male protagonists do fall into. And he was actually a really compassionate character. I gave that one 4 stars. And then I listened to another Sookie Stackhouse audiobook because the first one was so bad, but I just like was low-key obsessed. I didn't even want to know what happened to the characters. I was just obsessed with it. So I listened to book 2, Living Dead in Dallas, and it was just as bad as the first one. So moving on. And then I read Harrow the Ninth. Ah! Oh my god. This series is so good. I still think Gideon was my favorite of the 2, but I did love Harrow. Like 5 stars, easily 5 stars. So good. My whole worldview. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. I will not shut up about these books. So if you're a subscriber, or if you're not and you want to become a subscriber, I'm going to be just like talking about these books forever, I think. And then I actually went on vacation and read a couple books. It was just a staycation, and you'll actually see that vlog, I think, posting next week if everything goes according to plan. But during that time, I read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a seminal classic of Gothic literature. It is about an unnamed protagonist. She marries a man who I literally, Max de Winter. I could never remember his name. He had been married before to a woman named Rebecca, and Rebecca, even though she is dead, basically haunts not only the house, Manderley, but also the story and the very pages of this book. I thought it was really good. I think I gave it, 4 stars, especially towards the end. I've never seen one of the Rebecca films. I didn't actually know much about the plot of the book, and so there are a couple twists that really got me out of nowhere, and I was living for it. They really livened the story up and just made it come to life. It just wasn't perfect because I had a really hard time picturing some of the things that were going on, and I really had a hard time connecting with our protagonist. There were some moments where my heart just like absolutely bled for her and I felt really connected and really sympathetic and empathetic for her. But then there were other points where I was like, I don't get it. There's like glass between us right now. Also on vacation, I read Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This was my first Elizabeth Lim book, although I do own her other 2 non-Disney novels. So Spin the Dawn and Unravel the Dusk. And I did not realize this was in the same world as those were. So that's kind of a nice surprise. I am excited to read those at some point, and I am really excited. Book 2 is coming out end of August, I think. It hasn't come out yet, but I think it's the very end of August. So I will probably, or I should say hopefully, be picking that up almost as soon as it comes out. This was really enjoyable. Definitely younger YA, and once I realized that and was able to turn my attention towards it being younger YA, I really enjoyed it. And I really, really enjoyed our protagonist, Kiori. Why did I think that? Shiori. I was close. I really enjoyed Shiori's character growth through the novel. Not super taken on the love triangle aspects, but her as a character, absolutely adored. I gave that one 4 stars. And then my final vacation read was Gild by Raven Kennedy. It was fine. It was good. It feels like the first half of a novel rather than a standalone novel. I'm planning to read book 2 soon. I don't know. It just felt strange where it ended. It's a fairly decent, spicy, new adult romance. I can definitely see why people compare this to Sarah J. Maas. It's not as well written. I feel like it could have done with a little more editing, but it's not bad. It's not bad at all. Definitely far better than From Blood and Ash. So if you're looking for a follow-up to Sarah J. Maas, I would definitely recommend this series. And I liked the world building. It wasn't like perfect, but I liked the world building a lot more than I thought I would. There are some moments I was like, that's kind of like an odd, boring choice. But yeah, it is a King Midas retelling. It's very spicy. And then the last book I read was City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I loved this book. I ended up giving it, I think, I gave it 4.5 stars. There were some parts in the middle that were just really boring for me because there's a lot of world building, but the world building is done in a like we're traveling through the world kind of way, and a lot of just not interacting between characters. I did, however, really enjoy it, and the ending, absolutely obsessed with the ending. I thought it was fantastic. This series is so good. I am, actually, you can see, reading Kingdom of Copper. I immediately dove into book 2, and I'm planning to continue on like immediately. And I'm actually filming a little reading vlog for books 2, 3, and the short story collection, because I got an arc of that. So there's going to be a little Davabad trilogy vlog coming out, which... Let's get right into the TBR. I don't do huge TBRs because I don't stick to them. I'm not necessarily a mood reader, but I've been trying to be really kind to myself and not set like expectations. Like I have to read this book and this book and this book. No distractions. Like if I'm done with a book, I let myself like sit and think about what do I want to read next. So obviously I'll be finishing the Davabad series. Absolutely adoring it. Absolutely loving it. So happy to be reading them back to back to back. And then I will be 100% going into the Anne of Green Gables series, and I will be reading each of those books back to back to back. So all 8 of them, and there will be reading vlogs. I have been talking about this and planning to do this for a very long time, and it is finally here. I am very excited to be diving into those. I think this is like the perfect season. End of summer probably will take me fairly into autumn. But there are quite a few books coming out this season that I am stoked for. Number 1 being The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. This comes out in September. I love Cemetery Boys. I don't really have an interest in his other title, which is like a Peter Pan retelling, so I'm probably not going to pick it up. And that's just because I'm not a big Peter Pan fan. But Sunbearer Trials, 1000% Give it to me now. I will be reading it immediately. Hooky Volume 2 also comes out in September. It's been probably at least a year since volume 1 came out, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like I've talked about it a lot in past videos. Like I said, Nona, super excited. I'm sorry, the phone keeps dying. October, we have Grey Warren, which is the final book in the Raven Cycle universe that Maggie Stiefvater is ever going to write. And yeah, I will be sobbing. Just expect it. Then we also have in October Strike the Zither, which I'm super excited for. I've never read anything by this author, but I have very high hopes and high expectations for Strike the Zither. So fingers crossed that's not a disappointment. November sees Restless Truth coming out, which is a sequel to Marvelous Light. I think that's what it's called. I'll correct myself if it's wrong. I really want to finish this before the phone dies again. And then we also have The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. Susan Dennard is one of my favorite authors. Yeah, I'm just stoked. I trust her to write anything. And we also have Bloodmarked, which is the sequel to Legendborn, coming out in November. Oh my god. Yeah, I could scream. I'm so excited for that book to come out. So really, it's Bloodmarked and Nona are my two most anticipated reads basically for the rest of the year. And yeah, just I'm ready for it. So if you like this content and you want to see more like it, definitely consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. If you're already a subscriber, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. It means the world to me. If you're somewhere cold, I hope you're staying warm. If you're somewhere warm, I hope you're staying comfortable. And most of all, I hope you're reading a great book. I will see you guys next time. Bye!